France is entering one of the most turbulent periods in its modern political and economic history. What once looked like temporary instability has now become a deep structural crisis. Political uncertainty is piling up. The economy is losing momentum. Debt has surged to unprecedented heights. The budget deficit has grown so large that experts warn the government may soon struggle to finance basic commitments. And looming behind all of this is a disturbing possibility. France may once again find itself without a functioning government. President Emmanuel Macron now faces a countdown of his own. In only a short span of time, the French political system has cracked. Borrowing costs have climbed sharply, and for the first time in the nation's history, total public debt has surpassed $4 trillion, a sum larger than everything the French economy produces in an entire year. At first glance, this may sound like just another European debt narrative. After all, several European countries have carried debt burdens that far exceed France's. But France is not simply another state on the continent. It is Europe's second largest economy, responsible for nearly 20% of the entire Eurozone's output. If France ever lost the ability to service its obligations, the consequences would not be confined to Paris. The shockwaves would be felt across the entire European project. Warning signs of a deeper crisis have been flashing for decades. France has not ended a single year with a budget surplus in more than half a century. That means 51 consecutive years of spending more money than the government collects, with every administration borrowing to fill the gap. A system built on continuous borrowing cannot hold indefinitely. Yet every time France tries to fix the imbalance, political and social chaos erupt. The root of the problem stretches back to the 1970s. During that era, pensioners saw their incomes rise faster than those of younger workers, a trend that continued for decades. For the first time in French history, retirees now receive more in pension income than active workers typically earn in wages. But despite this enormous imbalance, reforms remain politically impossible. One political party calls for raising taxes, another demands spending cuts, a third insists on structural reforms. The result is a deadlock where no solution survives longer than a few years. The pattern repeats endlessly. A government proposes changes, opposition builds, protests erupt, and the government collapses, only for the next administration to face the exact same dilemma. Meanwhile, France's debt grows by thousands of euros every second. This raises an uncomfortable question now echoing across Europe. What happens if nothing changes? If France cannot stabilize its finances, the rest of Europe may have no choice but to intervene, whether they want to or not. And if such intervention is required, the future of the entire Eurozone could be placed at risk. For most of the 20th century, France represented prosperity and stability. It created one of the world's most generous welfare states, offering universal healthcare, expansive unemployment support, and comfortable pension guarantees. From education to retirement, the state promised cradle-to-grave protection. And for decades, it delivered. Schools, universities, hospitals, and social aid were all heavily subsidized or free for citizens. The French developed a strong national identity tied to a powerful social safety net. For many years, this model worked remarkably well. Economic growth was strong. Living standards rose steadily. France cemented its position as Europe's second largest economy. The French system was admired worldwide as proof that a modern economy could combine capitalist productivity with expansive social protection. However, this model also came with an enormous financial cost. Even though France maintains some of the highest taxes in the world, the system has always required additional support through debt. From 1974 onward, France ran budget deficits every single year, regardless of the economic cycle. At first, this constant borrowing did not seem dangerous. After all, many countries use debt to finance long-term investments. As long as the economy grows and the workforce remains large, debt can be sustainable. And for decades, France benefited from a young population and strong industrial performance, which helped mask the growing structural problems underneath. But over time, the promises made by the French state became harder to maintain. In the 1990s, France had about 5 workers for every retiree. Today, that number has fallen to roughly 3. and long-term projections show a future where the ratio worsens even further. An aging population, higher life expectancy, and increased healthcare costs have put enormous strain on public finances, while the tax base meant to fund this system has shrunk. Despite these growing pressures, politicians avoided reforms. The introduction of the euro brought extremely low borrowing costs, making debt appear harmless. Why confront a politically explosive issue like pension reform when the government could simply borrow more? For a long time, this strategy seemed viable, but the 2008 global financial crisis shattered that illusion. Like many nations, France poured billions into stabilizing its economy. As unemployment rose, the number of people relying on state aid soared. Tax revenues fell. Social spending rose. Within 2 years, France's debt jumped dramatically. Unlike Greece or Spain, France avoided the harsh spotlight of international markets. Its crisis remained relatively quiet. With the help of the European Central Bank's aggressive interest rate cuts, borrowing became cheap again. And instead of tightening spending, France relied even more heavily on debt. But the country had changed. Its workforce was smaller, its population older, and its recurring social commitments more expensive. The same system that had once worked so smoothly was becoming progressively fragile. Then came the pandemic. With the economy frozen, France had no choice but to funnel hundreds of billions into rescue programs, subsidies, emergency health measures, and state-backed loans. When the crisis passed, France emerged with a debt that exceeded 110% of GDP, a level unseen since the aftermath of World War II. This marked the moment when France's debt crisis shifted from theoretical risk to undeniable reality. The French welfare state had grown too expensive to function without continuous borrowing, and decades of deficits had permanently shaped the system. Today, France is trapped in a debt spiral. The problem is not simply the size of the debt, it is the structure of the system itself. Most government spending goes to recurring costs that cannot easily be reduced. Pensions, healthcare, unemployment benefits, and interest payments on past debts. Meanwhile, geopolitical rivals are exploiting these weaknesses. China, once the largest holder of U.S. Treasury debt, has sharply reduced its holdings, adding another layer of uncertainty to global financial markets. As global debt concerns mount, companies specializing in security, technology, and stability, like Liberty Defense, introduced in the sponsored portion of the original script, are positioning themselves for future demand. Their innovations in threat detection reflect a world where economic uncertainty, geopolitical tension, and technological competition are reshaping national priorities. In summary, France stands at a pivotal moment. Decades of political gridlock, demographic decline, rising costs, and relentless borrowing have pushed the country toward a dangerous crossroads.